Want to talk to Bill Oram. He writes for The Athletic. He covers the Lakers, and he used to work in Salt Lake City. And I want to ask him about that with what happened with Russell Westbrook. Not that he can speak on behalf of this fan last night who had the run-in with Russell Westbrook. In fact, could we play a little bit of this, Seton, before we get to Bill with Russell? How about we play the incident with Russell Westbrook with this fan last night in Salt Lake City? All right, it was ugly last night. Now, the camera is trained on Russell Westbrook. He's at the end of the bench. There is security there. I don't know if it's team security. I don't know if they're employed by Oklahoma City, if it's just somebody who works in Salt Lake at the arena. But an ugly incident. The fan gave his side of this and he said to Russ, hey, you better ice your knees. Russell Westbrook said, no, he told me to get down on my knees. Whether that was a sexual reference or a racial reference, in Russell Westbrook's mind, he went off. Both sides look bad. Obviously, with this fan, if you're engaging with him and you got what you wanted, and he's since done interviews, and then people have sort of checked his background to see who he is, and is he somebody who does this, incites this? Is there something else on his social media that might give a little indication of what role he played there? But Russell Westbrook, he knows he can't. And easy for me to say, okay, you can't do that. But it's a bad look for him. He has everything to lose here. Not this fan who got 15 minutes of fame, if you want to call it that. But it was an ugly incident. Well, we've seen this before in Salt Lake City. We've seen this with Utah Jazz fans before. Russell Westbrook has had a run-in before with fans there. Let's bring in Bill Oram, who covers the Lakers for The Athletic, formerly covered the Jazz for the Salt Lake Tribune. What'd you make of this, Bill, last night?
Hey, Dan, it was interesting because it does seem like we keep hearing about these incidents with Jazz fans, specifically with Russell Westbrook, and then other players come out of the woodwork and say, oh, yeah, the fans in Salt Lake are the worst, and I support Russell. I think you're right. There's just responsibility all around here. And the thing that I just keep coming back to is I don't think you can make this about about this particular fan base being terrible, or worse, like it being a reflection of the city or culture of Utah at large. And I think a lot of people try to jump on that, whether it's about Mormon culture or about, whatever part of Utah people want to latch on to. I think Jazz fans are great. But no doubt there are jerks in that crowd like anywhere else. One thing about Salt Lake City is those fans are right on top of the court in a way they aren't anywhere else in the league. You watch those games, there are not the lanes behind the basket. It is a tight squeeze in that arena. And whether that gives fans a sense of license to be more involved in the game, or if it just makes players more aware of fans being there. But ultimately, the onus for this falls on the player, who is being paid, I think, millions of dollars to be on the floor and putting on a show essentially in that environment. Which is not to say that Russell Westbrook should have to tolerate verbal abuse like he is describing from last night. There has to be a mechanism in place where he can point into the crowd, and a security guard gets that fan out of there if that abuse really rises to that level. But for Russell Westbrook to stand there and berate a fan in that manner ultimately reflects way worse on him and I wouldn't say the Thunder, but certainly on Russell Westbrook and his relationship with fans than it does on one fan who perhaps got out of hand at a game.
What do you think the commissioner's response is going to be?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think Russell Westbrook has to see something here, just for the way he handled it, and for the profanity, and for the threat. I mean, ultimately that was a threat of physical violence against a fan at a game, and that simply can't happen. Now, do I think that the NBA will maybe up their response to poor fan behavior? I mean, they've started handing out these cards at games that are basically a fan code of conduct in the area around the court. And that obviously is not working. At least specifically, we're not. I mean, that's not going to get anything done, right? So, if there's a zero tolerance policy to be had, or something like that, where a player feels like they do have recourse, I think that would be something absolutely worth looking at. But frankly, I think in any NBA arena, if a fan is verbally abusing players to that degree, I've seen fans, ejected out of games for being too vulgar. So I mean, that's not something that is completely without precedent.
Yeah, but you can't be threatening a guy's wife. I don't care what he says.
No.
And I'm guessing that he knew that he was on camera. Somebody was videotaping this. And I know you get caught up in the moment. You want to go after somebody. You just can't. He has more to lose than this fan who got his 15 minutes of fame. I do want to bring up the Luke Walton's last days question mark, your most recent column, how the Lakers strayed from their values and are now set to betray their coach. We sort of saw this one coming a little while ago, but is it over before it's over with Luke Walton? Is he done?
I mean, that's the assumption that everyone I've spoken to around the league and with the Lakers seems to have. There are people who've told me they think there's a chance Luke could survive this. It would take an intervention by Jeannie Buss, and it would take a pretty complete overhaul of I think the coaching staff. But at this point, I think what has happened is that the Lakers said they supported Luke. They said they were going to give him the kind of support he would need to succeed, even with LeBron James in town. And I think ultimately, whenever he needed that support, whether it was needing somebody to back him up when LeVar Ball swept in, or when Rich Paul was kind of working behind the scenes to kind of poison the well with Luke, I don't think that Luke Walton had that support, and it ultimately eroded his relationship with his locker room, and ultimately find him looking for work this summer. And I think that's where the shame in this whole thing is, because the Lakers made promises back in 2016 about what kind of organization they wanted to be after cycling through 4 coaches in 6 seasons. And Jeannie Buss said the most important thing was stability on the bench and identifying a style of play and building a culture. And those are all things that Luke Walton brought. And I think you can certainly take issue with some of his tactical acumen. And there's always going to be an expectation that when a team falls apart to the degree the Lakers have, that you just solve it by firing the coach. I just think that the Lakers have not really stuck by Luke in the way they said they would, when he's actually, for the most part, delivered on the things that he said he would bring to the table in terms of elevating the offense, developing the young guys, and instituting a culture. It just seems like things have fallen apart more quickly here than they probably should have.
Who's not back there next year? Now, we can talk about Luke Walton not being back there. But player, even with Ingram and that situation, you can't trade him. And then you got Lonzo Ball, you got Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart. Who's back? Who's not?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with Ingram, simply because I don't think they're, one, I think they like him as a player and would like to keep him. So there's that. But 2, with his health, I don't see how any other team could feel comfortable trading for him, which is just really unfortunate, because he's a player whose value was skyrocketing before obviously the blood clot was delivered in his arm. He's due for that rookie extension in October. I don't think the Lakers can give him that. So really, I mean, everything is going to be dependent on how quickly he can get it back on the floor, what his health is, and then how this next season plays out for him, and how he is going into the next summer, and frankly, a year beyond that. But for now, I think he's definitely back. Everyone else, I think, it's up in the air. I mean, Lonzo Ball is an injury-prone second-year point guard who is going to have played sub-50 games his second year after playing 52 games as a rookie. That is not a good look. I don't know how much other teams are willing to give up for a point guard who you don't think can play 50 games. Josh Hart has not been able to knock down threes and has had his own injury issues. The one guy who I think has some trade value is Kyle Kuzma, and he's the guy who's probably played the best next to LeBron all year. The problem is, I mean, nobody's going to think this is a good idea to just roll it back with LeBron and these young guys, and maybe a smattering of new free agents, new veterans on one-year deals. I mean, that just simply didn't work. So I would fully expect that the Lakers, get busy trying to trying to find combinations of those young guys that can net them some veterans on tolerable deals that will start to flush out a roster around LeBron, because I think the ultimate results of this season, they're 30-36. They're probably, they won 35 games last year in Luke Walton's second year at the helm, and I don't think they're going to get there this year. There's 16 games left. If they go 5-11, I'll be surprised. they're going to take a pretty gnarly step back this year. And I think that will give Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka, assuming they're both still here, a license to really tear this thing down and take a whole new approach, because it has not worked.
Bill, good to talk to you again as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Bill Oram. He covers the Lakers for The Athletic. Used to work in Salt Lake at the Salt Lake Tribune covering the Utah Jazz.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.